Welcome to the Just Third Way podcast, where we ask the question, would you rather own or be owned? Brought to you by the Center for Economic and Social Justice at cesj.org. Hello, thanks for tuning in again, and I'm glad to have on the podcast today a special guest, Mr. Rob Woodman. Hello, Rob.
Hi, Dave.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. We had your sister Monica on a few weeks ago, and we were talking about your family and all of your experiences with the Just Third Way and how they went back for years because of your father and stuff. And she kept saying, I need to interview you, and I've been wanting to interview you, so I really appreciate you coming on and doing so. So,
well, thanks,
how are you
for
doing today?
Me, Dave. I'm doing good.
So you moved from Ohio to New England, right?
Yeah, that's right. I moved up here about, 20-some years ago. I was in a merchant marine all those years. Say about 1989, actually, when I got my pilot's license, I came up here and visited an old girlfriend of mine, and then we got married, and we've been married for about 25 years now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Now you say pilot's license? You're talking about the boat pilot?
Merchant marine. Yeah, right. A ship pilot's license. I have an unlimited pilot's license for any size vessel in the world, and any power, steam, or motor in the world. Now that's a little. It's a little. Not exactly right that because you have to have the pilotage for the area you're piloting these big boats. So even though you're licensed to drive them, you have to know where you're going before you get on them.
Oh, I bet you do. As a matter of fact, I have an old high school friend who is a boat pilot down in New Orleans, and when a ship comes into port, they fly him out or row him out or whatever. I guess they take.
No, he probably goes out on a pilot boat. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a cool job. That's a good job he's got. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's been very successful and he likes it. But I guess you have to know where the sandbars and things like that are located.
Yeah, that's the essence of being a pilot. Local knowledge, know where all the eddies are and the swirls and the currents and the from monitor, everything that the ship could be in danger with, and to know the local knowledge.
But you didn't do that where you just guide boats in. You were actually
I was hired as a permanent pilot on ships that went certain routes, and I had the pilotage for those routes. I had all of the Great Lakes, or 4 of the Great Lakes, and all the connecting tributaries that connect the lakes. There's like 120 miles of restricted waters, rivers. That's the St. Mary's River. It's about 60 or 70 miles of river that is, you literally have to steer through the river. Oftentimes you have less than a foot of water under you, and these are huge vessels.
Wow.
So since these waters need pilots on them at all times, these companies hire full-time guys to be there 24 hours. So there's 3 guys always on there. And that's what I did. But what you're talking about, your friend, that's pretty cool because they'll get on Polish ships probably and ships from England. And the guys who are piloting those, they turn it over to the pilot when they get into those waters because they don't know where they are.
That's true.
Yeah.
In fact, there was, I think, a James Bond movie where a pilot, they turned it over to a pilot, and he was a part of a plot. They were like, "Oh no, this guy." So, it's interesting.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool handle. I didn't realize. It's just I've actually grown to appreciate it a little more since I retired. How it's pretty substantial job now that I look at it.
And you worked your way up to that from actually starting out more or less as a hand, right?
Yeah. I never thought I'd do it for a living when I started as a deckhand at 18. It was just a lark between college, and one thing led to another, and I just kept on not going back to college because I was doing so well.
Right.
Paid so well out there. But I never thought I'd make it a career. And I did it for 10 years, left for about 7 years, and I came back, and then I got serious and got my pilotage and figured I'm going to do this now. I couldn't make it in the real world.
Well, With all of the sort of industrial collapse in the Rust Belt, it turns out that you made a good decision to stay with that.
I think so. I agree. I'm one of the few defined benefit pension guys out there.
Right.
Boy, I'll tell you, is that nice. Oh my God. I mean, I had no idea what I had until I retired, really. I
Yeah.
didn't really think
Yeah,
about
you
it
were
that much. But
yeah, you were probably one of those people who, it's almost like things were so good you thought that was the way it was for everyone kind of thing.
well, yeah, everybody I knew had the same stuff, had
Right.
all these great benefits. And so I thought it was like that in the real world, but it's not at all. I came to learn.
You don't even pay for health insurance?
Well, no, I don't pay. My union pays my Medicare supplement. I
That's awesome.
pay zero for health care. I mean
Wow.
zero.
How
And
about that?
and this is all from being in a, well, as Kelso used to say, being around production. Just hang around where the production is. That's how you make the most money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get a job where the production is. Work at a crane or something, or that's close to this. And that's sort of what I did. I was close to the production.
Now, you actually worked for a union, or did you work for the ship owner and you were a member of a union? How does that work?
Well, on the Great Lakes, most of us worked for the company, ship owners, and we're members of the union. We had the bargaining union, American Maritime Officers, and we were
Okay.
the Great Lakes division of that. Deep sea sailors in AMO and MEBA work for the union. They're dispatched from the union. Our benefits come from the union. All our benefits came from the union too, but we had a seniority system on the lakes, and we worked for individual companies. That changed 3 years before I retired, and I began working for the union. They changed that all on the lakes.
Oh, okay.
And,
Interesting.
yeah,
I'm sure my friend
yeah.
that does the harbor pilot or whatever, I'm sure he works directly for a union.
Oh, he has. Yeah, he has probably has a harbor pilots union. Yeah, right, right. Yeah, those are great jobs. They really are. They're usually legacy jobs. Father to
Yeah, I
son
think his
stuff.
his uncle,
Yeah,
I think his uncle did it or something and got him into it. And then
yeah,
there's another entity involved called the Merchant Marine, right?
yeah. The merchant marine is what your pilot goes out and gets on merchant marine vessels.
Oh, that's just the
And
name of the vessel. So when you're saying Merchant Marine, because I always think about there was like a government agency or something that had to do with the military or something. It was like when you're supporting the
well,
military or.
the United States Merchant Marine is our private companies who move goods just like a trucking company would move goods, only you do it on the water.
Okay.
And that became sort of entangled with the military because they need ships in wars to bring materiel and so forth. So everyone thought of the Merchant Marine, kind of married it, especially in World War II, with the military.
Right.
And it still is quasi-military today because there's what are called CivMars, or civilian mariners, who work all the supply boats for the navies, for example, and
Oh,
bring
okay.
munitions around and so forth. So the U.S. Merchant Marine today is heavily subsidized by the U.S. government because if there were a time of war, they would need to deploy all of those private ships to the war effort.
Oh, okay.
So they've made a grand bargain with the U.S. Merchant Marine, and they said, they subsidize the pay, for example. There is an annual subsidy that almost every U.S. Merchant Marine ship gets that pretty much pays for their whole payroll.
Wow.
And what the government gets in return for that is, if a war should happen, all ships go to the government, all pilots on the ships are deployed to work for the government, all intermodal facilities owned by these shipping companies revert to the government. The railroads, the ports, the big shipping ports, these are all privately owned. And for this grand bargain, because it would be prohibitively expensive to build a modern navy now and to build, to do that.
Right.
So, but it's a very controversial thing, and a lot of people that don't think the merchant marine should be getting that subsidy, and talk all day about that, of course.
Right, right. It's interesting that it is that way. I mean, I don't think many people realize it, and it's just another example of how, capitalism and socialism are much more similar than most people think, you know. You got
I
the
agree.
concentrated ownership, and that results in these, alliances between the ones that make the laws and the ones that control the production. So that's, kind of where you and I and your father were trying to bring in a better solution. I was going to get into, what was it like growing up in a house where economics and worker ownership was a big part of life?
I'll tell you, it was different. It shaped my whole life. I learned the Kelso stuff when I was 8 years old. I thought that's how
Wow.
life was. I really thought everyone thought the same way.
Wow. Yeah.
It's so ridiculous, and I could never, I could never seem to agree with anybody I talked to my whole life. It was
You're
because
like,
of that.
didn't you grow up listening to widespread ownership? How
Yeah, yeah.
about that?
I thought everyone thought that. I thought everyone thought that would be a great idea too.
Right,
Because
right.
it made perfect sense to me. And I'll tell you what, as I got older and as I got to know Norm Curlin, as I got into my, adult years and everything, and I got to, started really drilling down deep in the philosophy of this and everything about it. I'm so proud that my father was involved in this. I'm so
Right.
proud of him that because this is really good stuff. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Your dad was a pioneer. I mean, there was no one
it,
before him telling him that that was a possible way to reform things. He was on the front lines of the start of it,
totally convinced, and he was convinced, and he convinced me, and I think it's, oh God, the world, geez, the world today.
So corrupt.
It's not even on the agenda. That's what
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's not even.
Yeah, no one's really it's like they don't think there's a solution, so they don't look for one. It's weird.
That's it. That's it. People think that this is the way it is. It always will and always will be. And you guys are kidding yourselves.
Right.
But I like what Norm says. That's just ridiculous. There's been tectonic shifts in social justice and individual justice all through the ages. And unless we have such a shift again uh, toward universal ownership or broad-based ownership of the means of production on the earth, I don't see how it will work.
No,
The
there's
whole
got to
world
be
will
a
be
collapse.
enslaved. The whole
Yeah.
world will be enslaved. I
Yep.
mean, but people, I find that people actually get annoyed. They get mad at you for bringing up a new idea.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm
It's really
saying?
strange. Yeah. It is. And when you and I think this way, we think that people at least listen to it, but they don't. They don't see the
No,
significance of it, you know?
no, no.
It's
I've been selling voluntary benefits insurance to companies, and I've been sitting down with employees a lot. Regular everyday employees.
yeah,
The 30,000 to 75,000 guys.
yeah,
Married, one kid, two kids. I mean, there's some bright guys, but this is a terrible thing I'm going to say. But I find that the general population is not very bright.
it's like the
I mean,
sheeple thing, you know?
I really can't believe it. My whole life I've been projecting all of this great wisdom on others, and I can't, when I sit down and do these plans with these people, they're beautiful people, I love them, don't get me wrong. I mean, salt of the earth, love them, great people, very talented in what they do and everything. But they're just not conscious of stuff like social justice and economics or anything like that.
Right.
And it's hard to get a conversation going. I mean, our leaders aren't even interested in sitting down and talking about this. How could the average guy?
Right. That's a good
Uh,
point.
uh,
It almost means the only way we're going to get change is if some, super billionaire or something just decides to support this and make it happen.
Yeah, no, I think
Because
you're
it's
right.
not.
I think Norm's right about that. If you could get some billionaire like that Paul Allen, say he left about 100 billion to CESJ, I think it's just a matter of getting on the bully pulpit and like Norm says, an authentic leader, which is defined as someone people will listen to,
Right. Yep.
and because it always blows my mind at how simple it is and how complex it is, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's simple, but it's hard to explain it to people if they don't get it. And Louis Kelso did come up with the actual, formulas and things like that, and he tried to communicate to people, and I enjoy watching, like the videotape of him on 60 Minutes and stuff like that. So you
Mhm.
actually gave him a ride from the airport one time. Do you remember anything about what you actually talked about? Did you get any wisdom from him?
Yeah, I do. I really acted like the chauffeur in the deal. He had come to Cleveland to celebrate Fastener Industries. Rich Bernanke is the president of Fastener Industries, a 100% employee-owned company that Rich was very instrumental in bringing 100% ESOP, all voting shares. Very, very successful ESOP in Cleveland.
Right.
Uh, and it was their grand opening or their 10th year or something, and Kelso came into town to help them celebrate it. And my father had arranged a press conferences at different hotels for Kelso. And it was
Okay.
so interesting to me because these local reporters had no idea who this man was. I don't think.
Right.
They were asking questions, but what I do remember is that it's exactly as Norm described Kelso. He was like a talking book. When he stood and held forth in front of the reporters, they'd ask a question and he'd just go on a soliloquy. I mean, he would
Oh, I
just,
bet.
and it was so beautiful and it was so perfect. It was like the Gettysburg Address kind of stuff. Very great economy of language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactitude of meaning, everything he was saying. Yeah, he was extremely impressive in that way and totally at ease in his knowledge. You could see that, just,
Right. Right.
yeah, he was very cool. Well, I drove him from press conference to press conference and then drove him to Fastener Industries, and all the employees were out on the floor. You know how they have, like when the president comes or something. And
Right.
all the employees were out, and they gave him a big round of applause. And he gave them an inspirational talk. He told the employees, explained to them how they were pioneers and all this. And that was one of the most successful, though. Rich Bernanke told me that when the economy would pick up, all the employees there would say, don't hire anybody. Don't hire anybody.
Interesting.
Because
Yeah,
they
because
knew all the
they're
money was
starting to
coming to
see
them.
all the
You know what I mean?
profits.
What?
Oh,
Exactly.
wow.
He said we'd
How
have to
about
hire
that?
people, and they'd go, no, don't. They go, we'll work over.
Wow. Well, that's kind of like, I had an idea of forming an ESOP, and chartering it to actually spin off other ones, like make that part of the mandate, because once the employees get the control, there's really not a lot of incentive to spread it to other people. But that's the kind of thing that we really need. That's the change that we need, is to not be selfish with it.
Yeah, I think it has to. There is the principle of limitation that people don't like to talk about, but I think it's that's definitely necessary. I think that is the way, though. People, when they get a bit of ownership, they want to hoard that. But
Right.
if the just third way were to come to fruition and all of its tenets and everything, people don't realize, but they would no longer feel they needed to hoard money for protection.
Right.
That would go away. That
That's
would go
true.
away. And so it's hard, and that's one of those things where it's hard for people to get their mind around. As you say, even when a person gets an ESOP, even starts to get greedy because he doesn't realize that there's not a flow. And he's right. They're right, because they're still living in this world, in this economy.
Right. Yep.
And
there are booms and busts because of the flawed money system. And
that's
so
right.
you have a tendency to want to hoard. But if we could get rid of the frivolous money creation that went to things like consumer debt and speculation, then the only new money created would be for real growth. And like you say, you wouldn't need to hoard, because you wouldn't have the boom and bust. And that's my opinion, that's my theory, and that's your theory. But I mean, hey, let's find someone that has a real either reason why it won't work, or at least test it on a large enough scale, maybe a statewide basis or something, because it just seems to me it's got enough potential that it should at least be tested, because what we have now is a flawed, proven failure, the Keynesian model, So
you're right.
It's sad.
The other thing, Dave, is we have to start from a certain point. And I have an ongoing discussion with a couple of very far right evangelical friends of mine from Wisconsin. They're still in Merchant Marine now. One guy graduated from Moody Bible College. He's got a degree in Greek in theology.
Right.
And I find that he doesn't, and I think this is half the country. Half the country doesn't want to include everybody in this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
their philosophy
you got to come at the CESJ with a certain idea of what makes the world go round and why we're here and what a just society consists of, and all of that. If you start out, saying, "No, this is just for us."
I mean, I know a lot of evangelical Christians, their philosophy is buy guns and gold and head for the hills, because the world is ending, there's going to be a collapse.
His answer is, he says stuff like this, and I can't argue with him. He goes, try a little going by Christ's teaching, a monogamous marriage for a couple of generations. You'd be amazed at how much capital you can accumulate.
Yeah.
I mean, he says stuff like that. Now, how am I going to argue with that?
Right.
And it still is really true in America that if you can do that, you can, and he says, and what you're doing is all for naught, because unless you are saved, give your life over to Jesus Christ. That there's this social justice stuff. No, first you give your life to Christ and you follow his teachings. That's how you achieve it, I guess. That's what he says.
Well, I think as Christians, it is important for us to, lead a life that shows that is a good thing, because I've never been good at just walking up and persuading people, but I'm trying to live my life with Christian values. And if we get in a conversation about religion, then I certainly tell them it's the grace of a loving God that sent his son to die for our sins and those things. But at the same time, we do have to look at the whole world and not be, isolationist. And I think setting up a system that sort of compensates for people's weaknesses is important. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to argue with the conservative
if you don't start out with that inclusive view, that idea that let's think of a system that is participation, right? The three things,
Right.
Everyone has to be able to get in on it. That's what makes it, a just society. If you don't start with agreement on those points, it all goes off the rails.
Yeah, it does.
It just does. Like
the way that I look at it, though, is sooner or later, these people are going to realize that just advocating for smaller government has not been successful in any way. We just keep getting bigger and bigger and more intrusive government. They're going to have to take a different angle, and the only one that works is widespread ownership, empower the individual. That way you can get rid of government agencies that
I
try to
agree with all
control
of that. Oh,
our lives.
yeah, yeah, no, I
It's
agree with
just hard to
everything you're
explain
saying.
it and get them to see it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
tell us how you do actually get the conversation started with people. I thought you did a good job at that one rally that we had where we went out and talked to
Well,
people.
I working on the ships. I had a captive audience all the time, my
That's true.
wheelsman or the captain, and I would always go there talking
Right.
about employee ownership and and blah 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 and all of that, to the point where they'd ask me to stop.
Yeah.
How did it come up? Well, it would come up. It would be easy to come up in a work site because when you're out there, oftentimes you're talking about benefits and union stuff and 401ks and all that stuff, and so it's easy to segue to that. And plus, we did an employee buyout. Everybody out there, by the time 2008 rolled around, we did the buyout in 2006, and everybody on the lakes knew about that. Every shipping company on the lakes knew about that. And we were about the third largest shipping company.
Well, I
Yeah, I
remember
was.
that you and Norm actually tried to get something big going that didn't come through, though, right?
No, it was not successful. Yeah, we formed an association
Okay.
called the Employee Ogilvy Norton and Employee Economic Empowerment Association.
Okay.
And we got board of directors, 4 or 5 guys together, other pilots and engineers, officers out there. This was an environment with 2 different unions and management.
Oh, okay.
And we tried to get everybody together as employees to buy the company. This is a really, really tough job because they were like separate groups of people. The
Right.
steel workers, unlicensed guys, and then you had the officers, and then you had the management in the office in Cleveland or Buffalo, and all groups fancied themselves as, I don't know, they didn't think of everybody as an employee. That was a hard problem. They didn't think
Oh,
of
I bet.
everybody as we're all employees. The accountant in the office didn't relate with the deckhand on the ship,
Right.
and neither did the deckhand on the ship relate with the guy in the office. And the companies kind of foster those things too. They have a separate dining room for the officers, like myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And from the unlicensed men, there are 2 different unions, and then you have management. So it was, unless we could have gotten the union to embrace it, and we really tried, both the American Maritime Officers Union and the United Steelworkers. I mean, we really tried. We had meetings with them, and it just wasn't in the paradigm. I mean,
Well, I tell you, let me
they couldn't
personally thank
turn that
you.
ship around. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Let me personally thank you for trying because I know that did take, days and weeks and, hours
Oh, that
of.
was incredible. It took a year and a half. I mean, we raised 60,000 from the employees, which I thought was a pretty good sum of money. And we
Yeah.
got $100,000 loan from the National Cooperative Bank in Washington, D.C., who had a
Oh, wow.
fund, and we had K Street attorneys, all Cornell lawyers that Norm brought in to work with the Ogilvy Norton attorneys. It was a very high level stuff.
Okay, so that's why you
We
say everyone knew about it because it was
Oh yeah,
something that.
I published a newsletter. I wrote an 8-page newsletter with pictures and the whole schmear, and put it out quarterly to all the guys on the ships.
Well, I
And
didn't
Norm would
know
write an
it was that
article.
big of a thing. That's amazing. I remember the conversation you and I had about it once before
Mhm.
was the biggest obstacle you ran up against was sort of the sentiment. You said, you took the average guy that went out there to make a paycheck and talk about ownership with him, and he would say, "You want me to own this place? I don't even want to be here."
Yeah, you got a good memory. Yeah, that's a friend of mine who said that to me when I was out. Yeah, no. Well, which is true. We have the other thing is we are workers in this country. We're not owners. I mean, I think everyone should be an owner, but believe me, the mentality is, I am a worker.
Yeah, it's just
People
sad.
want to come home and work in their garden. They don't want to come home and worry about payroll and stuff like that. They just, it's not in their ken.
Oh,
And
it
then how about this
absolutely is.
anomaly of, yeah, like we were just talking, the unemployment is like this, they need workers like crazy. In this atmosphere, how do you talk about how automation is taking over everything? Which it is, of
Right.
course, we know this, but
You know, when it is high unemployment, then people can understand that argument that
yeah,
technology is taking our jobs. I think they call it
yeah,
technological unemployment, right?
yes,
But we're in
yeah,
a up curve right now on the overall long-term
yeah,
downtrend
well,
of
we-
demand for humans. But right now,
well,
it's hard to communicate that.
when I got out of high school, you could actually get a job that you could actually get somewhere. Kids can't do that today. The unemployment is low, but Amazon
But,
announced that
but
they're
yeah,
paying $15 an hour. $15 an
they're
hour.
celebrating that like that's wonderful, right?
Yeah. I mean, come on,
And
it's
it's
like
not.
subsistence living. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
and they're acting like
That
this
is
is a
so
great
true.
thing. You
Yeah.
know, the one thing, maybe I've said this to you before, I think it's astounding that politicians get up and promise everybody that I'm going to make it the situation such that everyone gets to work their whole life.
Right.
That's the thing. That we're going to get jobs for everybody. And that's
That's
going to be the
true.
greatest thing of all. We're all going to work our asses off. And everyone thinks
Yeah.
that's great. Now, isn't that
That's,
ridiculous
it
to
is.
even
It is.
say that? Why would you say
Yeah.
that?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
that's the vision.
That's
I mean, geez.
that's the mentality. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
people are
I'd have to think
programmed,
that,
basically sheeple.
again, like Norm says, an authentic leader who people listen to, who could get up and articulate these ideas and articulate the reasons for these ideas and why they make sense and all of that. I can't believe that people aren't ready for that.
I know. Some are. Some are. I
Yeah,
think it's a slightly higher percentage, with each generation. So we can just hope that, you know, within the next maybe 10 or 20 years, something will happen. So I hope so. But,
well, I say the
speaking of,
young people are fine with socialism.
isn't
Now
that crazy? Yeah.
isn't that ridiculous? Yeah, I mean, they have no idea what they're saying,
And it's
and it's
funny
like something like, go ahead.
that you should talk about that, how people can accept socialism, because I was reading something that you sent me in preparation for this conversation because we were talking about your father. And you sent me this editorial that he wrote, which was for, I guess, a local radio station that focused on some of the immigrant communities and things like that. So,
That's right, in Cleveland,
yeah,
WZAK. It was the ethnic voice of Cleveland. Yes.
yeah, that's interesting. And back then, so many of those, I guess, ethnic groups were Eastern European and had
Mm-hmm.
come over to escape communism. So communism was a bad word. So they didn't want
That's
any
right.
part
Mm-hmm.
of communism, socialism, any of that was a bad word. But a couple of the things that were in that editorial I thought were really neat. I'm going to read some of it real quick. It says, candidates courting the strong anti-communist ethnic vote ought to be reminded that private ownership is the enemy of communism. Anyone who has ever lived under communism or who has studied the system closely, everyone works, but nobody owns. For our system to continue to prevail over communism, it is imperative that our working people begin getting a piece of the action. And I thought that was a great
Yeah,
quote.
isn't that crazy? I know my sister found that. Somebody found that about a year ago, and
Wow.
you're right. That thing about communism, that's lost today.
Right.
That idea is lost. Yeah.
Yeah, we need some more Bob Woodmans, that are on the radio or wherever.
Yeah.
He obviously helped, and your whole family, including yourself. I mean, the work you did, with the boats and everything, it had to have helped the sentiment. Because I was telling Monica, there's nowhere like Cleveland that has so many, employee-owned projects and community-owned things.
Yeah,
I
Ohio
mean,
is big in ESOPs. Yeah. Yeah.
it really is. I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta, take a little bit of pride in the things like that. What is it? Green. I
But
can't even remember the
the other
name.
thing, Dave, though, it was an industrial, urban, industrial city, Cleveland, where people worked in factories instead of being professionals so much.
Right.
And so
So it
it makes
works better.
sense
Yeah.
it makes sense that kind of thoughts like employee ownership would take root there. I find it difficult to talk to people about employee ownership when you get out into the rural areas that didn't come from a culture where they went to the factory every day or went to the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're more independent,
Right.
which is what we used to be. But
The entrepreneurial people are not as open to it. Like the teachers and the government workers and things like that, they're not interested in it. So, yeah, you're right. That's right. That's the laborers are the easiest ones to explain it to. So, but then you get into, like you said, you got, contractors and union members, and everybody has their own little turf in the system as it's set up right now. So, real quickly, tell us the story about your dad was going on a TV interview, and wasn't it Dennis Kucinich was supposed to go?
Yeah, that's right. Dennis Kucinich was, I don't know if he was mayor of Cleveland then or a mayoral candidate. He may have been mayor. He was on the Alan Douglas show, and they were going to talk about the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company, which was a real big deal back in the 70s. They wanted it to go private, and Kucinich wanted CEI to remain owned by the city.
Oh, okay.
And my father was in there talking about that the CEI employees should own it.
Yeah.
Or the people of Cleveland should have shares in it and really own it.
Yeah, set it up transparently, owned by many stakeholders. Yeah.
Right. And Dennis was getting, I like Dennis Kucinich, by the way. I know he's a flaming liberal.
Yeah, he's better than most.
Yeah, I like Dennis, but I mean, but he said to the guy, he goes, no, I don't want Woodman on the show. And he goes, why? He goes, because he's an economist. He's not a, running for office or anything, but the guy overruled Kucinich and said, no, I invited him. He's going to be here.
The average politician doesn't want to go up against someone who has facts and logic and, a good plan that really makes sense.
Yeah. I think we're finding out nowadays that you really don't have to tell the truth. You don't have to. You just get up and say what you want,
true.
and
it makes an interesting soundbite that they can play a few sentences of that, someone thinks they can get behind, and you get a vote, and then you get a budget, and then you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Sad, it really is.
Well,
I sure have enjoyed working with you through the years and going to the rallies together and things like that. I really enjoy. Really, everyone that I've met in your family have been super great people.
Dave, I really appreciate what you do. I really appreciate these podcasts, and I think you got tremendous energy. I'm really actually humbled by all the work you're doing with CES.
Thanks. I enjoy doing it. I really do. There's some great people involved, and sooner or later we're going to make some significant progress. And I think the next step that we really need to pursue as a group is some really well-produced, high-quality educational videos, because that's what people are spending their time really doing more than reading now, is watching videos, and it can be very persuasive. So.
Yeah, I always thought we should be a good candidate for a TED Talk. Not that those things are kind of, I haven't seen those around lately. I don't know if those are faded or what, but And I used to,
That would
those
be,
TED Talks are pretty strong. They're quite powerful.
yes, they are.
And it's usually a very good, interesting idea that captures you. And I think that our idea is such an idea.
It is.
If it, you know what I mean? And I've
Yep.
seen it portrayed many ways. Kelso's a great spokesman for his own thing. He's
Right.
smart.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yeah. We need somebody that's, I don't know, the younger, but, I don't know, certain younger people would respect to get up and be able to communicate it. I think you could do it.
I've learned a lot in my life. One of the things is that it's like Norm says, there are very, very few authentic leaders. I mean,
That's true.
they don't come along every millennium, and it takes discipline, and it takes fortitude, and it takes sacrifice.
Yep.
To do and
well, we've just got to take that as our objective to, be those leaders. So come visit us down here sometime, Rob. I think you like
it's like
the
12
North.
hours. I saw it. I put on Google.
Yeah,
12
North
hours
Georgia. Well, you can fly down. I'll do like you did for
Mm-hmm.
Kelso. I'll pick you up at the airport and we'll go check out the hills of North Georgia. I'm sure you'll be impressed. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
One thing about hanging around with Just Third Way is you get to hang around with all those smart people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I consider you a smart person. I'll put a link to that speech you gave where you talked about Don Quixote and stuff like that. I thought that was a great speech.
Please don't.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'll just tell people to go find it. It was good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Hey, we have total different orientations, don't we? You and I.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sorry, when you're in this type of thing, this Just Third Way, people always used to say to my father they couldn't nail him as a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
They could never nail him because he didn't speak Republican, Democrat. He spoke Kelso.
Right.
And
yeah, we don't have to fit in a box. Well, I sure appreciate your time today, Rob.
Thank you. And
you can join CESJ by going to cesj.org and clicking on participate, and you can become a paying member for $25 per year, and also a student membership is $15 per year, and that qualifies you for discounts on our materials such as books, which you can buy many of and distribute to your friends and family. And also, if you'd like to participate and comment on the podcast, feel free to call. I have a voicemail set up. I'd like to hear what you have to say, and I'll play it on the podcast. The number is 678-719-2840. Own or be owned.